Khalid gonna let us know what time it is. It's 1 o'clock. Negroes, wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay, we're good?
Yep. Mhm.
All right, y'all. What's up? What's up? All right, y'all. Count it down 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Hey, y'all. What's up? Welcome to episode 271 of This is the G Podcast. Before we really roll, I have to say, man, our hearts are with Minnesota as we process what I'd like to call a devastating act of political violence. State Representative Melissa Hortman, they've referred to her as a formidable public servant, described as a giant in Minnesota, and her husband, Mark, were killed in their Brooklyn Park home. And this is as we tape on Saturday. This has occurred Saturday morning. And also, Mark, let's see, I'm trying to, just because this information is coming in, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, were critically wounded in a separate attack in the city of Chaplin, but they are recovering after surgery. So you have, I think it sounded like, and you and I were talking about this, Tanya B, before the show started, it sounded like one, couple, but it is actually two couples, four people. Two are dead, two are recovering. Again, the names, Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, Brooklyn Park, which is near Minneapolis. They are both politicians. And then you had State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, were critically wounded in a separate attack in Chaplin. And just with more details, let me see if I can just kind of grab the details, because it's coming in as we tape.
Right.
So it's live. Man, I mean, I didn't, nobody expects this to happen. But Governor Tim Walz, and I'm looking at MSNBC as we tape this, Governor Tim Walz confirmed these were targeted assassinations by a shooter impersonating law enforcement. And it's just sad. It really is. One statement that has come out is, we see your resilience, and this was to Minnesota, we see your resilience, mourn with you, and reaffirm that differences must never be settled with violence. So again, two are dead, two are in the hospital. Just want to, let you know that before we jump in. Any thoughts before we move, y'all?
Yeah, it's targeted. So targeted, premeditated. Last I heard, Tony B, and you may have more updated information than I, that there was still a suspect on the loose.
That's
And
true. Absolutely. I'm looking at the news as we speak.
Yeah.
And there is a manhunt. Correct.
As they say, there are certain things that are kind of particular to certain cultures, so don't anybody try to come for me. With the exception of the DC sniper, and that was the exception, these aren't the types of things that we as people of Black and brown and tan people do. So I'll be interested to see what the so-called suspects and those murderers actually look like. And it sounds like, it could be some more of those insurrectionists. It could be some more of those. I don't know. I've never been. Have I been to Minnesota? I'm not going now. But there's a certain segment of population that do certain things in certain parts of the country, and I'll just leave it at that. But at the end of the day, that was somebody's wife, mother, daughter, brother, sister, and just prayers up if any of them had children.
Well, I think, we all know, and we've talked about it on the show before, that there's a level of domestic terrorism that exists. Yeah. I mean, you could call it whatever it is, but ultimately, this is terrorism.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
I've seen the movie Arlington Road before. I don't know if you have, but a lot of that, and what happened? What was the building, the big building that was toppled? That really led to a lot of changes under Clinton, and it was all domestic terrorism. It'll come to me in a minute.
Timothy McVeigh.
Timothy McVeigh. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That has not gone away. That still exists.
Oh no.
So yeah, I mean, to Minnesota, our prayers go out. So I just want to say that. Okay. All right, y'all. Moving on. Welcome to This Is the G Podcast. Yes. What's going on? We do your weekly news recap, news, politics, pop culture, and the tea with the one and only Tanya B is in the building. Welcome back.
I'm back. I'm back.
She's singing. Welcome back, Tanya B. And also, he is back, man. You know,
Yeah.
I was messing with you, man, about New York. I don't know if you heard the podcast and the Knicks. Well, you know, I knew you weren't licking your wounds. I know you weren't. I know.
Yeah.
But give it up for Talib Shabazz, y'all in the building, Talib. I said that is very unlike Talib to be.
Listen, man. I really, it's hard to get excited about the Knicks. It's hard to get excited about the Hawks.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Even though I was in my heart pulling for them.
Yeah.
To get excited about it. I mean, really, they had just left everything out there with the Celtics.
Yeah.
The Celtics thing. So,
Yeah.
So don't get me started, man. Let's move on. You had to say the Hawks. Why'd you have to say that, bro? You know I go off, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not, because I got to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads.
Yeah.
Happy Father's Day to Lee. Happy Father's Day to me, because I'm the only one going to say it. Because
Really,
have you noticed?
we came from a culture where you had to go and buy cards, and sometimes you had to mail them on time. I don't know how Hallmark is still the only reason why Hallmark is still in business because they sell their cards in dollar stores. But
Hey.
there was a time when cards could be like $5-10, but not anymore.
You're gonna get a text and a GIF, and I mean what GIF, GIF.
Yeah, right. I got a GIFT.
That's what you're gonna get.
See? Yeah.
What's the company? Tenor, TENOR.
Yeah. They're making all the money, but
That's where Hallmark's money's gone. That is
don't
where
be
it's gone.
surprised if Hallmark might own that company. You never know.
I agree. I'm with you, Tanya B. They slip into the digital world. I agree.
They do.
I want to say, man, before we get started, it's Black Music Month, and I don't want to stay on politics long at all, man. But we lost Sly Stone this week. We lost multiple people, and we'll talk about it in the tea. But I do want to talk about Sly Stone because we had talked about Sly based on the documentary that was released by Questlove back in late January, February. And I'm a huge fan, man. I didn't grow up in the heart of Sly's dominance, okay? I came along right around Family Affair. You know what I'm saying? When you're old enough to know, and you're not getting it secondhand from your older cousins. I discovered Family Affair on my own. I don't know if y'all did it. I was a pause button DJ, so I'd have, the little cassette recorder near the radio. And when a favorite song came on, you lift the pause button. And then when the DJ started talking, you hit the pause button again. Well, Family Affair was one of the first songs I remember recording. I mean, it really was. I loved that song, the simplicity of it. One of my favorite songs. But I want to ask, and I'll start with you, Tanya B. Tell me, man, what about Sly appealed to you? And tell us your favorite Sly song. But what appealed to you the most?
To me?
Yeah, to you.
I'll tell you, this was a part, my dad was in the business. So I remember maybe about 9 or 10 years old, I was going to Sly concerts and my dad was the MC. So I got to see it up close and personal. And although I was just a little goober, I remember him being very late. I remember my father coming to my sister and I's seats and telling us, and the people around us were like, does he know what he's talking about? My sister was like, yes, he does. And then I remember seeing Sly, believe it or not, the Newport Jazz Festival, which was still is in Rhode Island. And I remember, and I'll make this real brief. I remember going backstage with my dad after the concert. Everybody was all scattered everywhere. And I'm following my dad into this dressing room. I guess I don't know whose it was, but I had a poster, was green. And Sly's brother, Freddie, was standing behind the door, like he was that paranoid and that shy. And I asked him for something people don't do anymore. I said, can I have your autograph? And as this poster must have been about 2 feet by 3 feet, in this little bitty space, it just says Tanya, Freddie Stone. And that was it. And that's that. And I remember watching them on the Ed Sullivan Show and telling my mother, they feel the same about rock and roll as I do.
Wow.
And actually, my favorite Sly song is
Yeah.
a song called "Music Lover" because it showcases Freddie in the guitar, Larry Graham in the bass, everybody, Greg, Cynthia, and I love me some Rose Stone. That woman is very underrated, but you hear a lot of music to this day where Rosie's on background and you don't know it. So that's my Sly memory.
Cool.
Epic
Cool.
record forever.
Yeah.
And I had the album. I had all the albums. I used to go down in the basement and play them after school until the Jackson 5 came along.
Wow. Wow. What about you, Talib?
Yeah.
You're on the other end of the spectrum, kind of.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
exactly. You know, I'm a 1970s baby, so
Yeah.
you know, to say that I got tuned into Sly and the Family Stone later, you know, was probably around the age of, you know, I didn't really get familiar with his music until the 80s when I was able to start buying music for myself.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, there were certain songs that, you know, I'd hear my mother playing, you know, but Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself, that was like the ultimate for me, you know. And then because once I really started to get into music, and then I started listening to all of his parts, you know, the fact that you got all these different voices coming in, and you know, Larry Graham's, you know, little baritone voice, and then, you know, he's got the high point. It's still, I mean, it was just like a melding of all these different, not just, you know, instruments coming together, but it was like all these sounds coming together.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
these guys are incredible. You
Yeah.
know?
It was kind of like Dance to the Music when they start introducing everybody and breaking it down, and the
Exactly.
vocals. The doom, 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 doom,
Family Affair was the
doom.
same thing. You know what I mean? With the voices, it's all of those, those different parts just coming together. You know, kind of like a Temptations almost.
Yeah.
You know, where you
Yeah.
hear the 3 or 4 different voices, and everybody was distinctive. You know what I mean? It was kind of the same thing with Sly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, to see what he's looking like, you know what I mean? Like on the covers, he's got the leather, he's got the boots on, he's looking like he just stepped out of Rocky Howard Picture Show.
Yeah.
on some of the covers, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
black guy is doing this.
Yeah.
And you look at them and they all look kind of hippie-ish, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the music was so spot on. And then you look at the band members. I mean, it was a rainbow coalition back at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So no, enough respect to Sly.
You know, I know we all have a love for Prince, but you know, again, you know, it's interesting because my birthday is on the same day as Prince, so
Wow.
you know, and I've always been a fan, and you know, they do all these tributes right around, of course, Prince's birthday, but it made, especially with losing Sly this week, it makes you put into perspective how closely Prince modeled what he did after Sly Stone.
Oh yeah.
And not to mention the fact that even if you look at, because I was a funk baby, I was into Parliament, Funkadelic, heavy, man. I mean, I love funk. I mean, I was, you know, I had all the albums. I had Bootsy, you know, I had, of course, Parliament, you know, the Funkadelic. I wait, because, you know, Tanya B, Warner Brothers be dropping every fall. They every fall.
Warner Brothers and Polygram. Don't forget like the Confunctions and the Cameo Confunction. I don't know if you can put them Funk Cool in the Gang. They had their own label show right there. Oh, it's a Gap Band. Hello.
Yeah. But you know, but with the funk stuff, you know, it was a period like going back to school. You were going like during the school period, you get an Aqua Boogie, or you gonna get One Nation Under a Groove. You know, you were getting out. So I don't think Clinton could have evolved from what he was doing as a doo-wop band without what Sly did. I don't think. I mean, because truly Sly was doing it back then, dog. Because when I go back and you listen to, you know, Sly and the Family Stone Essentials, you know, after the announcement of his death, I went back and just you know, threw it on at the house and just listened to every song, and it's like, damn, this dude. And I agree with you. When, you know, again, real time for me was Family Affair.
Okay.
And you keep in mind that was a drum machine. You know?
Yeah, and he did it by himself.
He did it by himself. He really kind of would. If you watch the documentary, he kind of isolated himself from the band. You know, it was getting worse in terms of showing up at shows. You know, showing up late. He was notorious for that toward the end because hell, he had so many warrants. There's so much stuff coming after him. But bottom line, when it came down to it, ultimately, man, the dude was a genius. I mean,
He was. And many times a genius is a tortured soul as well. People that are highly creative. Let me look at it. Oh, I got one more thing I got to tell you. I had the honor. I remember when Sly had the wedding concert and he was about 3 hours late. I was there as well. I was there. My father.
Which concert was this?
When he got married at Madison Square Garden, that lady. Okay. Yeah, I was there at that too, and that was interesting. And he was very late for that. They had the niece singing, his mama was singing, his sister was singing, and people were getting a little unruly because it was getting late. And every time the crowd got unruly, they would stop playing the hook, the Family Affair, and people would. I think that was probably a Sly highlight for me. I was my father dropped me off, and this guy named Tony. Anyway, so I thought we were dating, but he had other plans.
Of course.
Where is he now? So anyway, but I talk about, for the many things I've experienced, I think the Sly wedding concert was more of a highlight for me than getting Freddie Stone's autograph.
Wow.
And then, it's funny, and I'm gonna end it with Sly on this, man. They showed it was highlighted on YouTube when they received the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame honor. Okay. And Sly was late for that.
Sly was late for Sly. Okay, he's probably going late.
And the funny thing about it, and I say this not to cut him down, but just it was funny because the whole band was up there, and they were going around, singing "Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself." Everybody was there except Sly, and they were like the video. You could see ain't but a minute left in the video. Then all of a sudden, from behind stage, here comes Sly in a blue jumpsuit, like a blue leather jumpsuit, and everybody's cheering, and he just walks up and says, "Hey, thank you," and but it was indicative of who he was, and you could see on the band's face, like, God damn, here we go. So.
But at least he showed up.
He did. So rest in power, man. And I think toward the end, I'm glad Questlove did what he did because it gave people a much better understanding of who he was. Even his kids have, done more to actually make his legacy clear to the public. So very good, very good. All right, y'all. Hey, let's go ahead and do news. I got, we're going to get into something else that happened in Black music because it's Black Music Month. We'll get into it in just a minute. Let's go ahead and do music. We'll come back. Mike, and we'll come back. Here we go.
News team, assemble!
It's time for the Week in News with Syracuse Mike.
With protests again on Monday, the state of California has sued the Trump administration over what it calls the unlawful federalization of its National Guard. Attorney General Rob Bonta says the president bypassed Governor Gavin Newsom to deploy troops in response to the immigration protests, an act Bonta calls illegal. And Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass agrees.
I don't think that our city should be used for an experiment to see what happens in the nation's second largest city. Well, maybe we can do this to other cities.
Governor Gavin Newsom slammed the president's move as illegal and immoral, insisting local agencies had things under control and indicated that adding the guard to the mix inflames the situation and makes matters worse. Meanwhile, according to several media reports, additional National Guard members are being deployed, and as many as 700 Marines have been mobilized to also be deployed to L.A. In Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass announced a curfew beginning Tuesday evening. Protesters against ICE arrests now must clear the streets from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m.
I have declared a local emergency and issued a curfew for downtown Los Angeles.
At Fort Bragg Tuesday afternoon, President Trump claimed, without providing evidence, that protests in L.A. against ICE are being financed by an unnamed individual. He also compared the protests to a foreign invasion. Meanwhile, a federal judge in California scheduled a hearing for Thursday on the state's request to block the Trump administration from using the military for immigration enforcement. R. Kelly's attorneys are demanding his release from a North Carolina prison, claiming there's a plot to have him murdered. The 58-year-old singer, serving 30 years for racketeering and sex crimes, is allegedly the target of a murder-for-hire scheme involving federal prison officials. An emergency motion filed Tuesday says officials offered an Aryan Brotherhood leader early release in exchange for killing Kelly. That inmate says he backed out and warned Kelly, but now both are in danger. Kelly's lawyer is calling on the courts and President Trump to act. In a stunning scene Thursday, U.S. Senator Alex Padilla was forcibly removed and handcuffed during a Homeland Security news conference led by Secretary Kristi Noem in Los Angeles. Video shows a Secret Service agent grabbing the California Democrat as he attempted to question Noem about aggressive immigration raids.
I have questions for the Secretary.
Padilla identified himself before being dragged out, pinned to the floor, and then cuffed. Outrage from lawmakers quickly followed, with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer calling the incident sickening. DHS defended the action, calling it a security response. Noem said later that she had a great conversation with the senator at some point after the scuffle. A British man is believed to be the sole survivor of Air India Flight 171, which crashed just after takeoff from Western India, killing 241 others. The plane was bound for London with passengers from India, the UK, Portugal, and Canada. The man who survived suffered serious injuries and spoke briefly from his hospital bed. Officials are working to determine the cause of the crash. In a dramatic escalation, Iran has launched over 100 drones toward Israel in retaliation for Israeli strikes on its nuclear and military sites. Israel's military confirmed the drone attack late Thursday, just hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced a preemptive operation. An IDF spokesman, Effie Defrin, says the initial strikes by Israel were a necessary step.
We cannot allow the Iranian regime to obtain a nuclear weapon that would be a danger to Israel and the entire world.
Iran's supreme leader says several top military commanders and nuclear scientists were killed in Israeli strikes on Tehran. While Iran hasn't officially confirmed its counterattack, it warned Israel has, quote, prepared a bitter fate for itself. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says American forces are not involved. A federal appeals court has ruled that the Trump administration can keep control of thousands of National Guard troops in California, allowing their continued deployment in Los Angeles. A hearing is set for Tuesday. He's been wanting this since his first term, and now President Trump will host a massive military parade Saturday night in Washington, marking the Army's 250th anniversary and his 79th birthday. The event will feature 6,600 troops, 150 vehicles, and 50 military aircraft. Defense officials say the price tag could hit $45 million, with as much as $16 million needed to repair streets damaged by tanks. The president is expected to deliver remarks during the celebration, which will take place in the heart of the nation's capital. The U.S. has rarely held military parades, and critics have complained that it's something that dictators in other countries do.
I'm just going to leave it at that. that last sentence. I'm just going to leave it at that. Hey, y'all, and I know we got comments. Let's wait. We'll wait till we may do the political roundtable. I just want to go roundtable on some of this at the end because I want to play something. And again, because it's Black Music Month, it's June. I want to get some thoughts. The BET Awards were this week, okay? And quite frankly, for a lot of folks who watched the BET Awards, it was pretty good. It was, considering we're still trying to come out of COVID. It had some highlights, but something happened, and I want to talk about it. So let me go ahead and play. This is Dr. O, okay? She had some comments on Glorilla. I'll just let her explain. Here we go.
How dare us? How dare us? Giving Glorilla a gospel award is putting piss in all of our grandparents' face. What do you mean, Dr. O? The gospel community tried to out LaAndrea Johnson for just drinking, but y'all are gonna give a gospel music award, the Bobby Jones Award, to Glorilla when the only thing close to gospel is her name, Gloria Hallelujah. I cannot believe y'all will continue to disrespect the Black community the way the world does. And then the Black community, we sit back and applaud, oh, that's good, and oh, that Black woman empowerment. That ain't about nothing what they did. What they did is put us on a national stage of continued buffoonery. We look like some damn fools. That's how come we don't have any culture. The world don't take us serious because we don't take ourselves serious. You'll never see other cultures. Well, Dr. O, you comparing us to the white folks? You goddamn right I am. You'll never see other cultures and other communities, the Asians, the Japanese, the Jewish, flaunting around the horrors of their communities. These young ladies out here are running wild because they don't have any elders in their ear telling them what's right and wrong. It used to be a time back in the day we would separate, it was called secular music from this type of mainstream, secular music and gospel music. That's what they call. That's what my grandmother raised me on. My grandmother raised me on Bible study, church, Sunday school, cleaning the church house on Saturdays. Our grandparents, y'all, would be turning over in their grave. And if they still here, I know they don't understand what we got going on right now. That is disrespectful. And then we wonder how come we have young ladies keep popping out thinking it's cool to shake their behind, go get BBLs and over-sexualize themselves and dress damn near naked on a stage because we continue to put people up in their face like they're some kind of idols and people that we need to be worshiping.
I'm going to leave it at that. I think you get the point. That was Dr. O. I'll put the full video up in our notes. So the clip, who wants to go first? I'm just gonna put it out there. Tanya B, you got the look. Give me your thoughts, or I'll go because I got plenty of thoughts.
I'm trying to formulate them so you don't get fined by anybody for the use of my language or my opinion.
You ain't gonna get fined. It's good. It's a podcast.
Park trying to come for me again.
No.
Anyway, you know what? I understand what she's talking about. I don't think there's anything gospel or glorious or hallelujah worthy about Glorilla. Yeah, but see, the other thing is what people have to understand is these types of award shows, as long as you've got a bag and someone to advocate and lobby for you, you will win even if you are not worthy of the award. So let me undo my collar. I'm getting ready to go in. Wait.
Not the collar. Good.
I pop my collar. Now, and this is what happens when people forget that these shows are nothing but politically motivated by the industry and by money. So if you take those two elements out of it, I see how this happened. I'm sure Bobby Jones was just as gagged by that as he was last year when Sexy Red was standing next to him twerking with a bunch of dirty $1 bills.
Yeah.
So, Khalid, why'd you look up? You forgot about that?
I don't want to be. I haven't watched.
You know what? I call them. They should be like Steve Harvey's Hoodie Awards because it's gotten away from what all of them have gotten away from what they're supposed to be about. And we don't even talk about the Grammys and how they changed their categories because God forbid, like Beyonce won. But again, Beyonce had people who were advocating and lobbying for her. So when it comes to BET, to be honest with you, it doesn't mean anything in my world. Does not change my opinion. I just call them the Hood Rat Awards because because if you look at even from its inception, things have just gone from 60 to 0. I mean, just look at the so-called talent that's up there now. If you took out everybody who was lip syncing, including Mariah Carey, and if you took out all the people that can't sing, you wouldn't have much of anybody up there. Truth be told.
So true. So hey, I'm gonna stop you there, and you can come back. Talib, thoughts?
Boy,
I don't want to come back.
Let's start with this. BET Awards have been trashed for years. In terms of how they select the groups that are going to perform, the performances themselves, the hosts, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see why people are even still watching this shit. With that being said, I'm not going to go out of my way to sit there and for 3 hours watch an entire award show, whatever. I don't care. I'm not spending 30 minutes on it.
Yeah.
I will go back and I will check some of the performances, like the A. Marie's performance, which I thought was dynamite.
Better than the Tiny Desk, but I'll leave. Thank God, but I'll leave it at that.
We'll get on that later too. Yin Yang performance. I like the Yin Yang twins got busy. What I mean? So but the whole thing about Kirk Jones and him twerking and Kevin Hart laughing at him, trying to embarrass him. I'm just like, and then Glorilla. Okay, so look, so let's talk about Glorilla just getting the award. If it's a quality gospel record, then we should be mature enough at this point to recognize a song from somebody's body of work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We should be able to recognize Glorilla's effort at penning a good gospel record. And it should, and if people really like it and it's a popular thing and it becomes popular, then why shouldn't it be recognized in the gospel community? But for, the problem I have with this is it was the Bobby Jones Award.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
We are now cheapening the legacy of Bobby Jones by putting his name on this award and giving it to a rapper who sings more about her pussy than she does about the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So when I don't mind the genre bending, I don't mind us crossing these genres because I always felt like music is music. So why should we have to, if something sounds like country western, then why can't it be recognized as country western?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And who says that the only person that's allowed to do it is Reba McEntire and Alan Jackson? You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make sense to me, especially when I've heard some of K. Michelle's country album and the shit sounds legit country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna stop you there. Feel free to jump in. I'm gonna give you my thoughts. And I was saying this before. I was a music director for a big station, a number one station, major market. When I first started, I came out of music. I was a club jock. I was a DJ. I always loved music. I didn't get into it for anything else but the music. Okay, so when I started, the Winans had just released A Friend with Teddy Riley. It was banging. It's Time. That album was banging, and I had actually the honor to work with Connie Flint, Constance Flint, who is a legend in Atlanta radio, gospel radio. I had a chance to work with Esmond Patterson. I wasn't doing gospel, y'all. I was doing the R&B side, but we were owned by the same company, so we shared computers. We were all together. And, I remember Larry Tinsley and all these cats who, became gospel greats and still, to this, we lost Miss Flint. Esmond is no longer with us. Larry Tinsley is still here. Bottom line is they would not have approved of this at all. I just remember sitting next to her, Connie Flint, and I was playing It's Time. And then she said, "Oh, that's not that." And the Winans were a gospel group. Right. They were contemporary, but people were not pleased. They were not pleased with that. Even when BB and CC Winans did what they did, as massive as that project was, there were a lot of people in the gospel community who still were not pleased. Some said, "Okay, you're bringing gospel to another audience. You're spreading it." But I don't think when you do or have an artist like Glorilla who really and truly, after that gospel song goes off, it's a wrap. You know what I'm saying? Not to say, I'm just like, and the Dr. O, who gave the commentary I played from her TikTok, she came out and she said, I like Glorilla. I like her in her element for what she does. But it's just like, I don't know if y'all, definitely you remember Jesus is Love by the Commodores.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Massive gospel song. It mentions Jesus. It's really a gospel song. Yeah. But there were gospel stations who wouldn't play it. There were black gospel stations that said, "We're not playing that." You got so I think Diedrich Haddon. Y'all familiar with Diedrich Haddon? Very contemporary gospel artist. And he said, and I do agree to some extent, gospel needs a reset, because if you don't have integrity to your format, to your artistry, then you're going to lose control of it. It's almost like, and I say this, and I'll let you go, Talib. It's like with R&B. Why do you think R&B is struggling? Because ultimately, genre-wise, it partnered with hip-hop to the fact that hip hop took over. Hip hop tends to just water things because it's such a strong form. It's so hell bent on being dominant. And this isn't a bad thing. It's just the way the format is. So I say gospel, if anything, what I get out of this is gospel as a format has to stay strong, or you're not going to be getting a lot of where you used to get a lot of these crossover songs that made gospel songs or artists that crossed over into quote unquote R&B radio. Is it happening now, Tanya B? When's the last big gospel artist to really? I mean, I remember what was Marvin? What's his name? Marvin out of Detroit. Marvin Sapp. Yeah, but what was the last huge gospel song that came out that dominated black radio?
What's that song here? Never Would Have Made It. And when Donnie McClurkin had We Fall Down, that was a push. But then I think hip hop is just diluting everything and not in the best way.
Yeah. So I just say, if anything, and I'll go back to you, Talib, you had something to say. My point in this is, I have no problem, just like you, Talib, with giving her a recognition for that song. But when you tie it to a Bobby Jones, who really is a signature talent related to the tradition of gospel music, you water down the format, if that makes sense to you.
Well, and that's what I really wanted to get at. What are we talking about here? What are we talking about with watering down? Are we talking about the sound?
No, not even the sound. It's when you. Right. But let me address that. When you say, okay, somebody like, and I'm not judging Glorilla because she does what she does for her audience. But that's pretty much for her audience. Her focus is for her audience. You're not going to see Glorilla go on a gospel music tour or maybe when she gets older, maybe within the next 5 to 10 years, she does a gospel album. I don't see that happening now. Okay. So when you allow an artist like a Glorilla, who's really just kind of doing it for an album, just as part of who she is in her life and not for the entire culture of gospel. When you do that and then you award them on the level of a Bobby Jones, when I say water down, it waters that it takes away from your integrity. No. That's why country music is saying, look, let me say this, and you guys may not agree with me. R&B music is not musical anymore. Okay. Country still has an element of musicality because they still play instruments. Okay. Same thing with gospel. You're still going to get instruments. There's a level of integrity that exists for those formats. R&B, it's pretty much a rap when it comes down to bands. You can forget that. That ain't going to, somebody going out as a band with integrity. Nah, that era's over. Yep. So go ahead, Talib. That's what I'm saying.
Right, and I don't disagree with you on the strength of its Glorilla watering down the award,
the artistry of, or yeah.
Right. But here's the thing: the problem that I always had with these people that didn't want to accept sounds of blackness. And the Winans, It's Time, and these records like that was they in the traditionalist sense, they did not want the sound to change. And the real of it is that sound is always changing.
Yeah. And can I say this real quick?
So here's the thing: as long as the message is not being diluted, the sound of the music should not matter. But it did matter to a lot of these people, and that's what we are experiencing with the country music as well. Yeah. It's not that the meat of the meat and potatoes of what makes country music is changing. It's the overall sound that's being delivered, and these people do not want that now. But again, who's to say that that's what it should be? I don't agree. If the message is there and it's a righteous message, then let's put that. That needs to go in the category that it belongs in. If we're talking about gospel, regardless of how, whether it was done with a synthesizer or whether it was done with an organ and a Leslie, amplifier on it. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, let me say, I agree with you, because here's the thing. I say that because what was that, 30 years ago? Okay. Since gospel has evolved in a significant way. Right. When it comes down to the sound, I'm not, the Five Blind Boys, Reverend James Cleveland, God bless him. But that sound is traditional. Whereas what we may consider traditional today is very much more modern. Okay. So I agree with you on that. But I think when it comes down to lifestyle, you can never, I don't judge people's lifestyle. Let people be who they are. But, I was a big Prince fan, but I wasn't going to walk into a gospel station and say, hey, you should be playing God by Prince. No, they're not going to do that.
Right.
I think ultimately what I'm saying is I agree with you, Talib, on the sound, if it can reach people, right. But sometimes you got a faulty messenger. And I think ultimately when it comes down to it, when you tie that messenger to Bobby Jones, you know what I'm saying? You said that, Talib. It sends a different message. If you just want to give her accolades for that song and the inspiration that it gives, I'm totally with you. Right. But I think when you have that as your only gospel award, and she mentioned, what was the artist she mentioned? The young, I don't know gospel as much as the female gospel artist who was drinking. They discovered, okay, and they shunned her for drinking,
right?
Because she was drinking. But you're open to embrace a Glorilla. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? Because she was drinking. Because help her.
No, but they haven't. Even though they've been talking about him, nobody has canceled Kirk Franklin and all of his gyrations that are happening.
Well, there's a whole lot on Kirk's plate. tell you B, but Kirk has survived. How do they say, like the roach in the apocalypse? He is still here. He ain't going nowhere. Tanya B, go ahead. I'm a pull back on that statement. Kirk has gone through multiple things, but on the other hand, Talib, he does gospel albums still. You know what I mean? He still is a gospel artist. there are a lot of gospel artists. You go back to James Cleveland back in the day. A whole lot of these artists aren't squeaky clean. None of them are squeaky clean. Nobody expects that.
Well, we only even talk about Tone these plays. Let me just say this.
Go ahead. Let's wrap it. We're gonna go long this show anyway. So what the hell? We're gonna go on.
One of my things I think about this whole gospel thing is, like you said, the name attached to it. And a lot of these other shows have, even with the Grammys, that's another story for another time. Traditional, contemporary. I think I said you've got the traditional is like a Bobby Jones name tied to this award, just like the Stellar Awards. They have like an Albertina Walker or a Shirley Caesar Award. I'm waiting for Mama Shirley to come out and say something, but the thing is, I think that's part of it. The other thing is, I get that, everything evolves and changes. You kind of have to get people where they are. But like you said, the messenger was faulty, because I don't remember the last time I ever saw Glorilla in a church trying to catch the Holy Ghost, first of all. Second of all, I think that that whole thing, again, it wasn't a purist award. Like I talked about how people lobby and that's, let's call a thing. They pull out that bag and they do what they have to do. And I just say this, she got that award this week. Let's see where she is next year or the year after. Because, these girls have a very short shelf life, and there's going to be somebody else that's going to come along and they're going to be like, Glow who?
And I don't want to come across like I'm bashing her, because for what she does,
raps.
But what she does for her target, for her audience, she delivers to that audience. They're happy with her. They go out. She sells tickets. She sells records. This is not an indictment of her. okay, at all. She decided to do that record, which honestly, it's a noble effort. It's huge. But I think giving it that Bobby Jones award, for the gospel industry, they felt slighted. And I can understand, because let me ask you, what if they had given the Hank Williams Jr. or Hank Williams Award to Beyonce? How do you think the gospel community would have reacted?
You mean the country community, right?
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me read. I'm known on this podcast for screwing up the language.
They are all up in arms, and you see Glorilla getting that award is not going to change the categories or the process at BET. Trust me now. Listen to me now. Believe me later. But Beyonce shook the table.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. This doesn't exist it doesn't exist in a vacuum. The argument that I want you to understand that, Talib. It's about the genre bending. I'm cool with that. But when you tie a legend, or let's say a trailblazer, into something or someone like that, it changes the message of what it sends a different message. Giving it an award on its own merit, I agree. And let me tell you, going back, I love, man, BB and CeCe Winans. That album was amazing.
Different lifestyle. They didn't even the title suggested something that the church didn't want to deal with. There's a lot of people they didn't want to deal with. That's another conversation.
The Winans album, A Friend, is still one of my favorite. One of my favorite songs. Whether you want to call it gospel or not, it's still an amazing song. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's an inspirational song.
Absolutely. Just like you said, just like Sounds of Blackness, Talib, like that.
Talib, one of my favorites, bro. I mean, Sounds of Blackness, man, they still playing it. It was on The Shy, like last episode. They were jamming it. On Showtime. I mean, Sounds of Blackness. That song ain't, people need that, especially now they need it.
That album's not going anywhere. It was just more. It was more than optimistic. That album has not gone anywhere.
Soul Holiday every year.
I believe whatever it takes.
I believe, I believe.
There's so many songs on that album. So
what was that? What was the upbeat? Was that
and the pressure? Yeah,
the pressure.
But that was okay. But one more thing. Let's look at the pressure.
Hey, Miss Ann. What's up, Miss Ann?
Miss Ann, came in the 90s, and they played that in the club. Do you remember all the grief they gave Tremaine Hawkins?
Oh, dude.
Fall Down came out. And my jam. Fall Down on Me.
Fall Down was the jam.
They all but wanted to put her out to church and send her to Alaska.
But I think they all hated the Hawkins fam. They were mad when
they tried to get
Happy Day. They were mad.
Everyone was the business when Oh Happy Day came out and crossed over, and people that didn't look like the Edwin Hawkins singers were embracing the song.
Yeah. So I think you all make good points. It'll be interesting to see going forward how the gospel community. But I do think, and I'll leave it at this. And you guys want to jump in before I close this out because we got to do tea. I do think the gospel community has to, how do you say it? They're going to have to hunker down to control the integrity of their format. Now, that doesn't mean you block out a sound that reaches, but it means in terms of who you give your awards to or who you allow your awards to go to, without saying,
So let me ask you this, and I'll leave it like this.
Okay.
If there was an inspirational award in the gospel music, category under the category of gospel music, if there was an award that said the inspirational song of the year, which is not necessarily gospel, but it inspires. It's a righteous song. The way I would. So would you still have a problem?
Not at all. I agree with you 100%.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Right.
I would have said, oh yeah, she deserved that.
Right. Okay.
That's the difference. Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Hey, Tanya, you ready? Oh, go ahead.
She will not be invited to the Dove Awards or the Stella Awards. Okay, I'm ready.
Oh, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that.
That didn't happen. That's not happening.
If anything, people are talking about gospel again, which that maybe that's a good thing for the format. I mean, I'm not saying the format's going away because it's doing well.
Oh, it's not. No.
No, I mean, not in terms of selling records. It ain't selling records the way every other. Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
People need it. People need it right now.
People need it. They listen to it, but it's not selling on the level of hip hop. I'll leave it at that. All right, let's do it.
Now then, children, it's time for tea.
It's tea time, y'all. Sipping the tea with Tanya B.
I should have gone to break on that. Give Tanya B some time to regroup. Tanya B, cool like that. I've been thinking about that all week. I've been when I heard the lady go off, Dr. O. I just need your opinion. I need your opinion. Go ahead. What you got, Tanya?
Okay, let's start off with the elephant in the room, the Diddy trial. Okay, Jane is still the texting, and my thing is, okay, she did not help herself by saying I kept participating because I wanted him to pay my $10,000 a month house rent. If it's just you to live there, girl, go get yourself a 2-bedroom, 2-bath somewhere and call it a day and get a freaking job and pay your own bills. You out there flat backing, and that's what she's doing, is flat backing, trying to get her rent paid. Girl, you know what people could do? Help them anyway. $10,000 a month.
No, you didn't.
Pay $2,000 a month rent and take the money and invest it so you can live. Because after a while, nobody's gonna want you back, flat or otherwise. Then you have the judge. Yes, Talib, I said it. And then you got the judge that got rid of one of the jurors. Then here comes Kanye showing up. He does not show up to support Puffy. He's showing up for a photo op because ain't nobody checking for him. And because him having the wife naked, nobody cares about it anymore. The text messages and the usual Michigan gossip there. Then I did see a video, and I wasn't sure if it was AI generated, but it was a video of the Oops baby Chance, the daughter that's the same age as the twins, where she talked about how they couldn't stay in the courtroom and hear this, and she was just saying now that her father makes her sick and he was not the person that she thought he was. Well, girl, take a number, pick a finger. Okay. And this Jane person, her story was similar to Cassie. There's supposed to be this mystery rapper who's supposed to come up, but I still say, where Faith Evans and Mary J. Blige and 112 and all those other bad boy artists that came up under him, ain't nobody talking until they get subpoenaed. And if they get subpoenaed, I think they're going to try to get out of it. Let's move on. Let's go back to something more important, like the genius of Sly Stone. One of the things, health ailments that he had was COPD, and people don't realize how serious it is. Now they have more medication to help people prolong their lives and have some quality of life. But when you can't breathe, you just don't live. And for somebody that abused their body as much as Sly did, him and George Clinton, I'm surprised he lived this long, but that's all I got to say about that. And again, we talked about his legacy and everything else. I want to also say, like, love and light to Ananda Lewis. She was that girl during that time. She was on BET, she was on MTV, and although it didn't last long, she actually had a talk show. What people don't know is she just had decided she was done with that whole life. She wanted to just go, have a normal life with her husband, who, by the way, is she's married to Will Smith's brother. A lot of people didn't know that.
Wow.
But she leaves him behind and a 14-year-old son. And I think she really was an unsung trailblazer for little black, brown, and tan girls who wanted to do what she did at that age. But she just, and she checked out of the madness of the industry before people really were able to give her due. So, the importance of her whole thing, and, everybody leaves this earth to leave a message. I say her message is, when you see something, traditional medicine doesn't always work, and she fought for 5 years. Had she gotten a mammogram and had it been discovered, you never know, she might still be here. But everybody has their assignment on this earth, and clearly her assignment is done. I want to say get well wishes to Coach Primetime Deion Sanders. We just had the issues with the circulation and the toe amputation. There's something else going on, but he's not really saying what it is. But we just hope that he doesn't lose any more appendages. So 5 on it to that. Let's talk about Salento. Now, here's another case of, just everything went wrong. And his mama got to take some accountability for his behavior because she was benefiting from it instead of reeling him in. So he went down the path of, being very well known to the cops for DUIs and drinking and driving and, drugging, and there's some mental illness in there. And this young man, imagine going to jail now for 30 years, coming out when you're 57, if you make it out, because he was high and he shot his cousin in the face and he killed him. But his grandparents went public to the courts and the judges and the legal world and said, do not let our grandson out of jail because he is a threat to society. When your grandparents will usually be like, oh, he just got in with the wrong people, or the people who will put their house up so you could get out of jail, they did not do that. I don't, Talib, you may know something, I don't know, but at the end of the day, this young man's life is, he was overseas working, he was out there whipping it and nay-naying it, but, it's a shame that, he just went off the rails. And again, being 27 and getting 30 years in jail is the world's gonna pass him by. That's all I got to say.
I got something real quick. Talib, what was your take on Silento? Because you're more in the hip hop genre, and that just kind of watching that generation in retail. What was your take on it?
I loved it when it first came out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was, come on, man. Who doesn't like the latest dance?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But America eats its young. I know I've said it before. I will continue to say it. The way they do these celebrities, and they put money in these young people's hands without any proper knowledge and any proper team and support behind them.
Yeah.
And then the people don't know that they're supposed to be going out to do that. You know what I mean? So it's just another story. It's another sad case of what this industry really will do to people.
Yeah, like Gaga called it the fame monster. It's a monster. It eventually takes you down. Yeah. If you can't handle it. Yeah. Go ahead.
So wasn't he like about 14, maybe 15 when that song hit? Yeah.
Exactly.
So, when you're that young and you don't have, the direction, the team, and I'm sure his mother was not adept at handling music business and dealing with lawyers and whatnot. And it's like they were really out of their element. And it's just kind of, like I said, it's a sad story and it keeps happening. But, when you've never had anything and all of a sudden you get what I call hood rich, which is temporary, what do you do? And he was basically a one-hit wonder, because after Nene, he's kind of like Old Town Road, really, and a whole bunch of other ones.
So true. What else you got?
Okay. The last thing we got to talk about is the return of Mimi, Mariah Carey. I keep saying she's got this album she calls MC16, and it may be her 16th album, but I still say, is MC16 a gun?
Isn't what?
MC15, MC something. Well, anyway.
M16 is a gun.
Yeah, M16. Yeah.
Close enough. And Lord, we don't need that out here anymore. Look at what happened, in Minnesota. But she did use the song at the BET Awards, and Mariah, I guess all of that
what do you say?
previous juice that she ingested has affected her voice. People don't even know she can't even really hit those vision of love notes, or that you got me feeling emotions, I can't let go notes anymore. Right. She was lip syncing, and she's been lip syncing for a very long time. People are going to pay to hear her lip sync, but the one thing I got to give her 5 on it for is going back to hip hop roots, and shout out to Rakim, who she has on this record. She always did like to be down with the fellas. So let's see where it takes her right now. But the other thing is, yes, she is Mariah, but at this stage in her career, at this point, where the music industry is or isn't right now, is she gonna sell anything?
Yeah.
There was a time when you put up a record, you could go out and tour for a year and change. I don't know that this is gonna last that long.
Yeah, I think Tanya B, it's better for artists like Mariah to be in Vegas doing the residencies. I think that audience appreciates them more. You don't have to deal with some of the crowd shots that they were showing at the BET Awards, where people are like, "What the fuck is this?" You know what I'm saying? Right. Yeah. The good thing, and I'm interested in seeing how much influence he's going to have over her, is Anderson .Paak. Because
he produced the song.
Yeah, Anderson
isn't. He has influence over her, but
they're seeing each other, right? They're a thing.
Yeah.
They're a
that's
couple.
her boo thing.
Oh yeah, they're a couple.
They been booed up since there was snow in Park City, Utah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're a couple, and he's honestly, Anderson's extremely talented.
How long is that gonna last, though? You know how she do.
Yeah. So maybe she'll get something out of him, considering this album. I'm gonna wait to hear what it sounds like. We'll see. What else you got? Anything?
And these artists like Mariah, like you said, Mariah, Anita Baker, even Alicia Keys, Toni Braxton, y'all don't need to put out new music, because the radio's not going to play it, because you are now the elders of all formats, and people don't want to hear that. And when it doesn't sonically fit with a SZA or a Her or LMA, who all sound the same to me, radio is not going to support them like they did. Then they get mad. So just come on over to the Cassapolis Podcast Network, or just go to Vegas and just keep touring. And because people want to hear your hits, because they have, that's part of the soundtrack of the fabric of their life. They don't really want to hear anything new.
But let me tell you, the philosophy was, and you were in radio, Talib, you were in radio too. The philosophy was, when you had a legend release something, you play it for about a week, 2 weeks, let people know it's out there, and you pull it, unless it's a massive hit, unless it's truly a comeback. The only person I really saw come back from just, I won't say anonymity, but out of nowhere, was Dionne Warwick. When she came back with that Isaac Hayes album, that Deja Vu, now that's old school. But what I'm saying is, everybody knew her from, the way, Walk On By. And when that Isaac Hayes album came out, it was like, oh man, she did it twice. She kind of did it twice, because she came back in the 80s, like later 80s too. But that album, what's that? That Dionne album, right?
Like, yeah.
Was,
and then, but see, she also.
I don't know about y'all.
No, but she also she was smart. Clive wanted to say, Clive doesn't do black records, white records. He just does hit records. Deja Vu.
And maybe now as you mentioned Clive, maybe what's her name? Aretha Franklin too. Yeah, Aretha did it too.
But the thing
but very few people can resurrect him.
After he resurrected her with the black audience, he took her right across the street with the Bee Gees, and then she made Heartbreaker, and then she went on Solid Gold, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, so true. But I ain't gonna lie to you, that Deja Vu out, that Dionne album, I will still throw that on. That Isaac Hayes production, Isaac Hayes just takes you into a different zone. It's like, damn, that's Dionne.
We haven't had another Isaac Hayes either. I guess we lose these legends. I know that things have changed, but there's never been another Isaac Hayes. There will never be. I don't care. There will never be. I said it. Another Sly Stone, another George Clinton. There will never even be another Aretha Franklin. Fantasia tried it, but she's not there yet.
Yeah, Prince has, Prince has snatched, some of the Sly, even Bruno Mars, has taken some of that Sly juice, but yeah, there'll never be another.
No other, Usher's trying it, no other Michael Jackson, Chris Brown messed up the church's money and they don't want him. So as we lose our legends, they are, as the song says, they are irreplaceable.
Yeah, so true, so true. Mm-hmm. All right, so hey, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and wrap it up. Here we go. All right, y'all, we're back. Just real quick, I'm not going to do an official political roundtable, but before we wrap, y'all, how you feeling this week with everything that's going on right now? How you feeling?
I'm not feeling great at all, man. This Israel trying to step into Iran thing, trying to bring us into war, I'm like, fuck Netanyahu once and for all. Can we all just agree to that this guy is the devil?
Yeah.
In his government. I'm not just talking about Israel.
Yeah.
I'm saying that Netanyahu and the people that believe like he does need to be beaten. Period.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, Talib, because I had a conversation with somebody this week, or since this started. And I was saying to them that I'm old enough to remember Carter and the peace talks and actually the peace treaty
Right.
You know, and I said to them, I said, look, different day and time, look how it worked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Look, today, the leadership is different. The leadership is what's the reason we can't get a deal is because the leadership has different motives. The motives are not pure. And this is what happens when you've got a situation where you've already got a guy who's being tried in his own country, similar to Trump for the most part. So I've said it on this podcast several times. I mean, I think, you know, I don't think you're going to get any type of peace until the leadership in that country changes. I think I think you have to separate the people in the country from the leadership. You have to say, okay, I think it's a leadership problem. I agree. Anything else like this week that irks you, man? I know there's so much. I mean, yeah, and it's tough. There is. This is like, damn.
Look, you know, I'm telling you, man, just the blatant hypocrisy. I mean, I've been off of the show for a couple of weeks, man. And the hypocrisy level of what people are trying to pull and get away with is just insanity right now. You know, Trump is doing everything he possibly can to disrupt the system.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way I can really look at it. It's not that, you know, I don't believe that he really believes in his heart of heart some of the stuff that he's pulling and, you know, and getting away with, but it doesn't matter. He's on the take.
But can I ask you about the Elon thing? What's your take on that?
You know, look, man, you know what it is. Once again, these people are hypocrites. That's the problem. We got nothing but hypocrites. You know what I mean? So it's like you can sit here and complain about one thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother. It's not going to bother you until it affects your bottom line.
Yeah.
And
because that's what happened. That's what happened in that situation.
I mean, you know,
the money. You messed with my bag.
So now, I mean, we already knew that Trump was a part of the Epstein files.
Yeah.
We knew this already. We didn't need Elon to come and say, "Oh, it's a big deal because Elon said it."
Yeah.
Come on, stop playing, man. You want to talk about all the fraud and the waste and all this stuff, but you got millions of dollars, almost billions of dollars in governmental welfare being handed to you.
Yeah. Subsidies, contracts. Yeah.
So what are we talking about here?
Yeah. I hope people see it that way. What you got, Tanya B?
You know, this week I really had to limit how much news intake I subjected myself to because it was like, this is just too mucking fudge over here. Yeah. And I just said, you know what? I had to cut it off. But then when I woke up to, like Talib was saying, to Israel this morning, I'm like, oh, Lord, here we go again. It's like somebody just wants to get into a war.
Yeah.
You know, and the people that start the wars don't care about anything else. And like you said, the bottom line, because they get to line their pockets. So, you know, I would say it's Black Music Month. Listen to music. Oh, wait, I got my Black Music Month earrings on, y'all. Hold on.
There you go.
Wait a minute. What? It's a cassette. Remember this?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My mixtapes.
Right. The ones that you played the tape so much from rewinding it, doing the quick rewind, you used to snap it. You had to go get
You had to go get the pencil, and because it wouldn't rewind anymore, you had to go get the pencil
and the razor blade
and the razor blade. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you know, now is the time for people to remember. Yes, you want to know what's going on in your world, but self-care is very important. Don't let this overload you. Don't let it stress you out. Don't let it, you know, don't let it. I say don't let it into your house. You know, I know it sounds easier said than done, but sometimes you just have to shut it down.
Yeah, so true.
You know, because if you really get too embroiled in all of this mess, you know, and you see the anxiety level of people already. You see people who are mentally ill going off the rails, and you see people who think they're not going to make it. You know, it's almost like the stock market crash of '29. You know, and when people were like jumping off buildings and felt that they had lost everything, that there was no way to recover. You know, there is an end to this, but man, sometimes you have to just cover your eyes, like the elders would do. They send us out of the room as kids and they cover our eyes and ears. Sometimes you just have to shut it down And with that said, I'd like to say happy Father's Day to anybody who is a father figure. And those of y'all out there and ain't doing what you're supposed to do.
She had to go Tyler Perry on us. Here you go. Okay, all right, Mama. Okay.
No, the 13 and 14-year-old kids that are going to jail for life and being tried as adults because they went and shot up a party, and now their mother's on Instagram begging for money. Go sit down and have several seats, Mama. You a little too late for the party now. You should have reeled them up when they were before. And how you know your kids out there in the street with guns shooting up what was supposed to be a cousin's party? Miss me with that BS. That lady need to go somewhere and sit down.
I hear you.
I'm done. Okay.
I gotta thank everybody who hit me up this week for birthday shout outs. I appreciate you for that, and thank you so much. Every time it happens, when it hits, it does remind me of Prince. It reminds me of Black Music Month because it happens in June. So I appreciate all y'all definitely for the shout outs. And I just have to say, man, especially when we came on this morning with the thing that happened in Minnesota, and we don't come on here to be inflammatory. We recap the news. Okay. We just kind of come in and tell this is what happened. I don't think you can, stick your head in the sand and ignore it. You got to kind of know what's going on. We just try to deliver it in a I guess a quote unquote different kind of way, so that you can embrace it and understand what you need to do to accept it and then move on. But I will say this: I think the ultimate thing for me, and I said this to somebody when all this stuff starts happening. Y'all heard the term "wag the dog." The movie and a lot of stuff is just meant to distract you. Okay. Because what's really going on is they robbing you.
Right.
That's what's really going on. But they don't want that. How do you say it? They don't want that exposed and the lead on the news every single day. Right. So it's just like, every administration I recall, there's been a distraction, a war, like Iraq, Saddam Hussein, when we found out that Bush was no good. There's always something that comes in. My only, you're right. I always knew. But my concern is when it comes down to this is ultimately, I just don't want another, and I hate to even say the emergency number. I'm not going to put it out there like that. I just don't want that because when you start dealing with factions, and how do you call ideologies, it's a different level of how you get a response, how responses are. And, these folks aren't going to go away until eternity because that's what we're dealing with to some extent. Even the Middle East we've always had that. And I just don't want us caught up into that. I want to be able to get on a train, plane, bus, whatever I get on and kick back, put my headphones on and be happy. I don't want to be wondering. I don't want the Patriot Act coming back. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. I know most of y'all old enough, from 2001, we might have some young audience here who may not understand what it was like. Yeah. But I remember what it was like, and I don't want to go back. Right. I don't want to go back. That's all I got to say. Leadership. I don't want to go back. I'll leave it at that. Love your thoughts, y'all. Scan the QR code if you're looking at the podcast. Now, two things you can do when you are listening to us, or if you subscribe to Spotify, you can watch the podcast on Spotify. You can also listen. Some of y'all don't want to always see our lovely faces, but you don't mind listening. Hey, you can listen to audio as well. So both options are there. All the links to social media are on the podcast in the notes. You can leave a voice message if you have any comments. I'm sure you will have some comments, but the gospel people don't play. They be coming, some of y'all quiet, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm sure we're going to get something on that. Again, what you're watching is still out there. I have not done, I have seen, I got a couple of things I want. I did see Tyler Perry's Straw, and I'm going to review it. Damn, y'all hard on Tyler Perry. I get it. I understand, but he has done a few good movies. I'm gonna leave it at that. But what you watching is going to be out. I'll give you some updates on some movies that I've seen. But I took the week off, y'all. It was birthday. Quite frankly, no lie. Somebody gave me some little drinks, looked like Red Bull with tequila in it, and next thing I know,
he was dancing on the
next thing I know, it was Friday.
Yeah, the recovery is not the same. Bro.
No, bro. Hey, thank you for the person who gave me that little drink that looks like a little fruit. You know what I'm saying?
He had some joy juice.
And then they said, "Hey, kind of take it light. It's got a little tequila in it." Ooh, boy, it's like, what happened?
What had happened was.
But I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for the thoughts and gifts and the tequila. I appreciate it. But damn, I'm stumbling, bumbling this week. Here we go. Type, you got last word?
Shout out to everybody in the DMV. Shout out to all my homies in Boston, Beantown. Shout out to everybody who supports the podcast. You can still like, subscribe, share. 25 to 25. It's not too late.
Yep. There you go. Talib, you got it.
Scan the code, baby. Scan the code. Scan the code.
Talib, shout out.
Yeah, I just want to say what's up to the family of Drez the Beatnik in Atlanta, hip-hop legend, just an all-around good guy. I've been messing with Drez since he moved to Atlanta from Philly, and, we're definitely going to miss him.
I hear you. Shout out and rest in power to him. Yeah, we were having the conversation about when you get to a certain age, man. Whew, boy.
Yeah.
Didn't realize. So shout out, man. Every day is precious, y'all.
Yes, it is.
Every day. When you wake up, enjoy and be thankful. Got to say that. All right, y'all. Again, we appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Tell a friend. Share the podcast. We appreciate it. And with that, episode 271's in the can. Y'all have a great week, y'all. Don't let it get to you. Just, I hate to say think positive thoughts because anyway, I'll leave it at that.
It's hard. Keep your head to the sky. Go old school. Keep your head to the sky, okay?
Put your head in the face of the pillow when you do it. Go ahead. All right, y'all. Episode 271's in the can. Y'all have a great week. Peace. Power to the people.
Peace.
Fight the power.
Hang on, y'all.